Hey, Mike, Joanna, all good?
Yeah.
All good, thanks, Tim.
So the decisionating problem-solving process that we have here is a really very, very interesting process for people to go through. So let me just describe kind of the bigger picture. Um, it is a change management process and quite an intensive change management process that people can use for precisely that reason, for the following reasons. We've got status quo on the left, and we've got future vision on the right. So we're understanding where we are today and moving to a picture and a vision of where we want to be tomorrow. Having said that, we're going to focus on it from its more pragmatic or practical perspectives, which is the following. It's called a design thinking process. And one of the definitions of a design thinking model is that you are designing the way that you want a group of people to think about a particular topic or problem. It is a problem-solving process from the context that you're looking to give people the information that they need to be able to make their own opinions. It is, at a very essential level, a set of slides that you can create. So in our materials, there are 8 slides, one for each of these topic areas. So if your job is creating documentation for the purpose of internal communication, then that's one way to look at it. And one of the ways that I like very much to look at it is that it links very, very closely to the topic of meeting management and moderation from the perspective of a leader. How do I set up a series and sequence of interventions and meetings and communication sessions in order to move a topic through its different stages? Yeah. So quite interesting, quite complex and tough to use, and it really puts on the table this topic. Do you have a plan? Do you have a plan for your problem and the way that you're going to move it and escalate it and discuss it within your area of influence and within your organization? So let's get started then. Number 1 says problem. Mike, what does the problem mean?
Well, of course, we're looking at decision making and problem solving. So the idea here is that there will be a problem, something that needs to be tackled. Now, stage 1, of course, is then establishing and defining that problem, which really comes in 2 parts. The first part is taking a look to see what are the symptoms, what is this problem causing, what is the issue. But maybe even more importantly is getting other people to see that there is a problem and getting other people to see that this problem requires solving, because it could take time, it could take money, it could take resources. This leads us into the topic of contracting. Contracting being the idea of needing somebody else to buy into the issue, to buy into this decision-making process, to enable you to do it. And at this stage, it's all about showing them why action does need to be taken.
And the topic of contracting is really important for me. I've got a book up there by a chap called Peter Block, and he says that contracting is the most important task of an internal influencer, an internal consultant, an internal business partner. And it is the sense that nothing moves forward, or nothing even should move forward, without a 50-50 contract. So where both sides of the discussion feel that they need to move forward together. Yeah. So this balance of responsibility and ownership is something that's critical, and that's made possible through this process of contracting. And, you know, if contracting happens at the beginning, we're going to see that it has to happen at every stage through the process. Joanna, what does data say to you?
So in stage 1, when we try to understand the problem, we organize either a meeting or we send an email to get people to agree on what the problem is. Yeah. And that meeting or that email in phase one is going to result in the fact that we probably don't know enough information and we need to know more, which means we need to collect data to have enough description and detail to be able to move to the next stage. So in this phase, we get every stakeholder to describe the situation from their perspective. Differences of opinion and different perspectives must not be censored or criticized at this stage, as this can lead to conflict. And if this leads to conflict, then important stakeholders already closing their hearts to the problem. And so questions and different viewpoints are the focus of this stage.
Okay. So that sounds, people are going to close their hearts to the process. Sounds pretty serious. But that's exactly what happens, right? It's like, you know, the problem statement is going to result in everybody saying, well, we don't really agree with this, so we need more information, we need more data, we need a relevant standard of information that we can all agree with. And that's going to result in quite a few meetings or data collection points. Yeah, and you're going to have, you know, reasons for the problem existing, and those reasons may very well, you know, relate to different departments, even different people who have been, you know, responsible for this problem existing in the first place. Yeah. There are so many organizational problems that are created by specific people with very good intentions, yeah? But there are also problems created which started years and years ago, which nobody ever thought to address, and it's a legacy or historical situation that people are dealing with. And precisely because this, you know, allocation of the responsibility of the problem is a part of the diagnosis, we have a stage there, which is the hypothesis stage, to try and deal with that. Mike, what's the hypothesis stage for you?
So we're moving into stage 3, the hypothesis stage. We've established that there is a problem. Hopefully we've established to some degree that action needs to be taken, and we've collected some data to understand what the impact is, and also potentially to start to seek out the origins of that problem. Now, the hypothesis stage is designed to avoid as much as possible too much conflict, too much you know, finger pointing and justification, in order to simply explain what could be causing this problem. So the method here is a very, very open discussion with open theories, why, and the key question, could it be this? Could it be that? How about this? Open proposals of suggestions of where this could be coming from, but in a non-confrontational process, in order to create this open atmosphere for discussion.
Joanna, could it be that the reason the last group was not able to do a good job of describing their problems to us in the final workshop, that we didn't create this film so that they could review it before actually doing the work?
Or could it be something else? Yeah.
Or Mike, could it be that this film was the reason that people didn't do the work, because it was too explanatory and it confronted people with the quantity of work that they would have to do in order to get a good result? Yeah. So there is a very emotional thing that's happening here. You're bringing a problem to the table, and you're trying to get to the core of what this diagnosis is, and how do you want to do that? In English, we have the phrase, how do you do something without ruffling too many feathers? You know, pushing the feathers on a bird back the wrong way, which makes it uncomfortable. So how do you put bad news onto the table in a way that people can accept? And the could it be statement is one of the design points behind that. It means that people can accept that there is a problem there and move on from it and forward from it without feeling attacked and without feeling that they are to blame, even in situations where it could very well be the case that that is true. Mike, diagnosis?
So diagnosis is the fourth stage, and importantly, it's the final stage of the status quo, meaning the current situation. So at this stage, you've established the problem, you've collected the data, you've had an open discussion around the origins of this, and now you're at a point where you are willing to commit to a clear diagnosis of the problem, the origin, and begin to look towards that future vision of how we can then actually move towards solving it. So everybody at this point should be clear. The stakeholders should have a full picture of the situation, and everybody ideally will be on board and know that this is a decision that requires that solution.
And diagnosis is a medical term. You go to the doctor and he will examine you, and he or she will examine you, and then eventually they will give you a diagnosis. They will tell you what's wrong, and then they will offer or suggest a form of medication or improvement or next steps. And what will you do? If it's a serious diagnosis, you will normally go and get a second opinion. Yeah. But for less serious diagnosis, you'll decide whether you want to move forward. Yeah. And very often you'll decide not to move forward because the actual treatment is more painful than, living with the condition or whatever it happens to be. Yeah. So that's a really, fundamental point. And if I just visualize it here quickly, there's a line at this stage, and you're asking people, do you want to cross that line from the status quo into the future? And so this line is, from the internal perspective, and especially from the perspective of influencing other stakeholders within the organization, what information do you need to give them that is going to enable them to make the decision, yes, I want to move forward, or persuade them or convince them that those ideas are correct and right and need to move in that direction. Yeah. So let's assume that this group of stakeholders is going, yes, fantastic, we want to move forward. It moves us into step 5, where we start setting some goals, Joanna.
Yeah. So once the stakeholders see the larger picture and the implication and consequences, then we can move on to developing the future vision. Yeah. And having agreed that the future vision is something that we all want to go to, we can start building and defining goals and success criteria. So in phase 5, we define the goals. The key questions here are, where do we want to go, and with which level of quality do we want to get there? And these questions must be answered before we go on to actually developing a solution. Then moving on to phase 6, where we develop alternatives, we want to try and unleash the creative forces of the group. So for this, we need a positive atmosphere. We need a lot of patience and acceptance of different people's styles and ideas. And, pressure and competition do not usually help in this phase. If alternatives are suggested and found to be good, they should be developed further in order to create real alternatives. Now, the danger in this phase is that new ideas, potentially radical, groundbreaking, out-of-the-box, genius-type ideas, are not given a chance to live and flourish because the majority is happier going with an easier, more traditional alternative type. So strong leadership is really important in this phase because it will enable new ideas and demonstrate their potential.
It's amazing how many people don't really do brainstorming, right? It's like people are very often happy with the only solution on the table, the clear and obvious solution on the table. And so, this process, if you like, for me, step 6 is kind of the goal of the process, to enable a really collaborative and interesting brainstorming process and creating out-of-the-box ideas to find something different, something that will really solve that problem from the ground up. Very important moderation process here. You know, the person who is leading this process is now really changing a lot, because they've been wrapped up in that status quo, which is essentially, you know, speaking about old news, negative topics, all of the problems that have been created, getting acceptance out of it. And now they're moving into, you know, a very different mindset of goal creation, and then into the moderation and brainstorming stage. I've seen this being tackled by 2 different people. So the person who was good for the first half of the process, the status quo half, hands over then to somebody who takes on this more generative and creativity based piece, and working it as a group of 2 all the way through. So, you know, let's imagine then we've got a list of good alternatives created. Then what happens next, Mike?
So once the alternatives have been established, we move into stage 7, which is the evaluate stage. So what's so important is we've established our goals in stage 5, and then we've spent time and effort looking into our options. Maybe there is a clear kind of obvious choice. Maybe there's some more, as we've said, creative out-of-the-box opportunities. And sometimes the goals can get a little bit lost behind this kind of exploration, or behind this kind of almost dogmatic idea of, well, we'll take the obvious choice. So in stage 7, we've looked at the alternatives. We may have prototyped them if necessary to see how they really react. And then we're going to take a look back to the goals and see, okay, these are our options. This is our list of choices. How well do they really match up to the goals that we've clearly defined and established in stage 5? And only then are we in a position to really select the best opportunity and the best, make the best decision.
Great. And so moving into, roles and responsibilities in step 8, defining, you know, who's going to be the right person to do the job and to begin that project. So the word contracting now really does kind of grow in the sense of its importance. Imagine in that problem definition stage, you were speaking to 4 or 5 key stakeholders who were a part of the original problem and really affected by it. There is a huge amount of contracting that needs to be done within this process. You will need permissions, authority, empowerment to do so many of these different things. You'll have to really work on your influencing and convincing skills at every step of the way, fully in the knowledge that there may be many parts of the organization that do not want to move in this direction, that are still resistant to the forward movement of where this is going. But I think in summary, it is a change process and can be seen as such. It is a design thinking process, and from a more pragmatic perspective of just what meetings do I need to create in order to move a topic forward, then this can give some inspiration and ideas. It is a sequence of meetings, with the agenda as effectively pre-written for you in terms of what the focus of those meetings are going to be, which means if I need to start mapping out a series of events across the schedule, this can give me ideas of time frame and agenda, how long that's going to take. It is a moderator's toolkit. So, which type of situation am I going to find myself in, and what moderation elements do I need to bring into those meetings in order to achieve the goal of that particular section, or those 2 different areas. And it is certainly a preparation tool for a couple of different things that we might want to do. So Thanks very much, guys. Great overview of the decision-making problem-solving process. There are a couple of more things to discuss here, but we'll leave those for another film.